So good morning, everyone. What I'd like to do now is introduce you the way I see you on my screen. And if you would, take about a minute, tell us your name, where you're speaking from, and always tell us a good lead for you. So I'm going to start up in the corner with Majdi. And if I said your name wrong, just straighten me out.
No worries. Hey, everyone. My name is Majdi. Majdi's fine. I commonly go by MJ. That's what most of my clients call me. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Essentially, I'm with IZT Tech. Our business is we have our own private infrastructure here in Metro Detroit. So we essentially provide all IT operations. So whether that's security audits, cloud needs, VoIP provider, all the solutions we develop in-house. A good client, or I guess a good lead for me would be is really we work with anybody from entrepreneurs to medium-sized organizations in any industry.
Thank you, MJ. All right, my name is Keith Rand. I own a company called First Quality Printing. I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana. And a good lead for me is anyone that wants to do any kind of printed document. We specialize in books, but we will print just about anything. So First Quality Printing, Keith Rand, Indianapolis, Indiana. Next, Rhoda Israelov.
Good morning, all from Indianapolis, Indiana. My team and I at Say It For You write what you read when you go on our clients' websites. So we focus on the wordsmithing piece of marketing. So we sometimes work directly with clients, other times we are subcontracted to agencies. But our mantra is to take one client per type per market and to give the client the copyright to the material. So blog post number 500 was different from 499 others that are still living on their website. So the advantage of blogging is that it basically doesn't die. It stays there as a magnet for a search for people looking for information about you. Our goal is always to prove that the client is in the now and in the know. And right now we are looking for a company that cleans offices or restores homes and offices after a fire or a flood. So we say it for you.
Thank you, Rhoda. Nick Sullivan, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. Nick Sullivan, Business Solutions here in Raleigh, North Carolina, work across the nation. We all know how helpful the PPP program was to businesses, help keep them afloat, but most owners aren't aware of other programs that are available to them if they own commercial property, or they hire employees, or they develop products or new services. There's significant dollars. I partner with a national company helping Main Street businesses. It usually takes me about 15 minutes to identify the potential opportunity, and even small businesses can get thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a shame most businesses aren't aware of these program. So good lead. Any Main Street business that you go to, the doctor's office, the manufacturer, the golf course, the convenience store, businesses that you walk into, talk to the owner and say, there's programs out there. A person that can identify might be eligible. Check it out. Again, it's Nick Sullivan, Sullivan Business Solutions.
Thank you, Nick. Adele Bush, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Adele Bush. I'm coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio. My business is ASB Business Services, LLC. We do personalized, customized, and exclusive executive telephone outreach services. We also do business research and prospect development. Our company has evolved from just doing phone calls to a consulting firm. And what that means is that we can build an entire phone campaign from start to finish for you. We can help you find the prospects that you need through a particular database that I use, and we can execute the phone calls as well. A good lead for me this week would be a business that has an accounts receivable issue, when they need to have someone called just to remind them that payment is due. Our accounts receivable calls are courtesy calls. They're not demands for money, and we always get the results that we need. So look forward to speaking with all of you. Adele Bush with ASB Business Services, LLC, Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you, Adele. John Vandersall.
Hi, good morning, CVN members and guests. John Vandersall. I am from Indianapolis. I'm a residential real estate agent with the FC Tucker Company. We are one of the oldest and largest brokerages in the state of Indiana and even nationwide, but only operate in Indiana and northern Kentucky. About half my business is representing buyers and the other half representing sellers. So a good lead for me is, who do you know who is looking to buy or sell in the next 6 months?
Thank you. Glad to get all these introductions this morning. I always like to say the weather is good in Indiana, even when it's bad. So we're doing okay this morning. What I'd like to do now is just take a minute and have our introduce our speaker. Our speaker this morning is Amy Corbin. And Amy, this is your opportunity to shine and tell us about you and your organization. So you're up, and you also have screen control.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Rhoda, for the invitation, and thank you, Keith, for facilitating today's meeting, and for all of you for being here. My name is Amy Corbin. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana ABLE Authority, which oversees our state-sponsored 529A ABLE Savings Program, which is called INvestABLE Indiana. Going on the theme of, everybody mentioning a lead, my audience that I primarily market the program to are direct service providers, such as residential facilities, any sort of, not just residential facilities, but any sort of disability service provider that provides some sort of support to an individual with a disability. People with disabilities, parents or caretakers of loved ones with disabilities, certainly the legal profession, specifically in the area of estate and special needs planning, financial advisors certainly have an interest in this program to help meet the needs of their clients that might have disabilities or have a loved one with disabilities. And then as well, businesses, especially given that this is a savings program, a 529A. You might be familiar with 529 college savings programs. If a business is interested in being more inclusive and supportive of individuals with disabilities and supporting those members of their workforce or loved ones of workforce members, then they can certainly sort of provide this as an additional benefit in their benefits package and support their diverse workforce. But so I'm going to share my screen to give you a little bit of background on what exactly is an ABLE account, and I'll go into who's eligible, what are qualified expenses, all of that good stuff in regards to the program. But initially, to give you that background on what exactly is ABLE, it is federal legislation that enacted this program. So I am a state employee. I have a board of directors that include the state treasurer, the state budget director, the secretary of FSSA, so Family and Social Services Administration, the executive director of the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. I also have 5 gubernatorial appointees on my board that include an individual with a disability, parent of or caretaker of an individual with a disability, individual with expertise in legal or estate planning, an individual with expertise in financial advising, and disability service provider. So I have a large team behind me that helps oversee the program, and I certainly, as the executive director, oversee the daily functioning and operations of the program. But ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, and this legislation was enacted in 2014, and it specifically allows for tax advantage savings for certain individuals with disabilities to save money and not risk losing their means-tested benefits. So specifically, benefits that we're looking at that ABLE accounts protect individuals from losing are benefits like SSI, housing benefits, and Medicaid. So historically, this population that we're working with has been limited to having no more than $2,000 in their name in order to qualify for these means-tested benefits. So essentially, a population has been forced into poverty in order to receive benefits such as Medicaid or supplemental security income, also known as SSI. And these accounts that I mentioned earlier are also known as 529A programs. ABLE accounts were modeled off of the structure of 529 college savings programs. And while they're very different products, there are certain similarities between them. And there are sort of, if any, take away anything from this presentation and knowing anything about ABLE, you'll just want to know that there are two key benefits to having an ABLE account. The first is that that ability to save money without losing benefits. And the second is the tax advantage savings. So an individual does not have to be receiving benefits in order to have an ABLE account as long as they meet the eligibility criteria. So it's post-tax dollars that fund the account, and the money is all withdrawn tax-free as long as it's used for a qualified expense. So in regards to who is eligible for an ABLE account, there is certain criteria that has to be met. And the first of such is that the disability must be present before the age of 26. And if the individual is receiving SSI or SSDI, they would be eligible. If they are not receiving benefits, because as I mentioned, they do not have to be receiving benefits to be eligible, but they still meet that age of onset criteria, they can self-certify that they have a similarly severe disability. So self-certification, they're going to want to produce or have rather in their records a doctor's written diagnosis of significant disability. And an individual can open the account on their own, or an authorized individual such as a parent, guardian, or power of attorney can open an account on their behalf. So the age of onset of disability being at the age of 26, when the legislation was first created, there was no limit to age attached to the bill, but given the impact that it would have on other federal programs, they did impose that age of onset of disability. We are, as an ABLE industry, trying to increase that age of onset from 26 to 46 so that hopefully a broader population of individuals can access these accounts. And I will mention that Indiana, ABLE accounts are not just available in Indiana. I think it's about just over 42 states have active ABLE programs, and Indiana is actually part of a broader alliance of programs, ABLE programs that take an economies of scale approach, and that we pool our resources together but hold them exclusively separate within a trust, a series in a trust, so that the funds and the investors participating in our program still have their money sitting within the state of Indiana. But it allows us to offer, this structure allows us to offer a unique approach to offering the program in our state, and lower cost and more affordable program. And as I mentioned, under self-certification, an individual would need to essentially meet Social Security's definition of disability. As you may or may not know, someone can meet Social Security's definition of disability but not qualify for their programs. So means-tested benefits will look at how much an individual has in income and how much they have in savings. An ABLE account protects the pot of savings that an individual has. So it doesn't address the full means testing dilemma in terms of income and assets, but it certainly protects the assets that an individual has. So an individual may not be eligible, without going too deep into qualifications for Social Security benefits, such as SSI. Again, an ABLE account helps protect the resources that an individual has. And in meeting that definition of disability, the specific language is in that second bullet point that is essentially there in the enrollment process going to have to self-attest to a significant functional impairment that has lasted at least a year or expected to last that long or result in the individual's death. And they have to have a written disability related diagnosis by a physician, not a psychiatrist, not a social worker, not some other sort of diagnostician. It has to be by a physician. So if it was another diagnostician that provided that disability diagnosis, there would have to be some level of collaboration between the diagnostician and the physician, because that is the way the federal legislation is written. And they need to be able to recertify and maintain that eligibility verification. So the area where I get the bulk of my questions is around what is a qualified disability expense from an ABLE account. And the easiest way to sum up QDEs or qualified disability expenses is that it is any expense that helps that individual improve their health, independence, or quality of life. So an ABLE account is an incredible financial empowerment tool for an individual that has historically, as I mentioned, been forced into poverty in order to maintain vital benefits. Typically, when an individual is receiving benefits like SSI, they receive a monthly cash benefit, and it's just over $700 a month. So that certainly isn't a lot and doesn't cover a lot. It doesn't cover a lot of expenses for an individual. But then they're limited to how much they can have in savings, that limit being $2,000. It's hard to build up assets, and it's hard to save for your future and even basic living expenses. So an ABLE account steps in and helps remedy that dilemma. And then, as you can see on the screen, qualified expenses are very broad, and the legislation was intentionally created that way so as to help meet the unique needs of individuals with disabilities. Because whether or not you know someone with a disability, whether or not you yourself have one, we all know that we are unique individuals and we face our own unique circumstances. So again, the legislation was intentionally created very broadly in regards to qualified expenses so as to meet those unique needs. So it could be educational costs, it could be financial advising, it can be attorney expenses that can be covered by an ABLE account. Funeral and burial expenses are an important one to keep in mind of, and we even see individuals using ABLE accounts, beneficiaries we'll call them, using ABLE accounts to help supplement retirement. So if they're participating in some other retirement program and they want to supplement that through an ABLE account, or if they're not or unable to participate in such a program, then certainly an ABLE account can help cover those later in life expenses. We might have a young adult who would be interested in having an ABLE account that would like to tap into the resource, tap into having an ABLE account to help support their employment training and other supportive technology that they might need when entering the workforce. There are lots of other state and federal programs that can help support an individual with this disability, but there are limitations to what services and supports those programs can provide. So you might have vocational rehabilitation that might help an individual get hearing aids, but they might not be able to cover something else that they might need. So then they could use their ABLE account to step in and help cover that. Transportation is a big benefit or is a big piece of having an ABLE account, I should say, not piece, but qualified expense. If an individual is receiving Medicaid, Medicaid doesn't typically cover transportation expenses, so Lyft or Uber fare, or even if someone wanted to save up money to buy an accessible vehicle or a non-accessible vehicle, it can, if you're limited to having $2,000 in your name, it can be rather difficult to save enough money to achieve that goal of saving for a vehicle. So they can use their ABLE account to help step in and pay for that Lyft fare, that Uber fare, saving for that vehicle. Even housing expenses. They can save their housing expense to pay for first and last month's rent, to get into their own independent living circumstance, or to pay for a down payment on a home. And as you see, the last bullet point on the slide is basic living expenses. So just basic, going to the grocery store, buying your food, going to the pharmacy and paying for whatever your prescriptions are, maybe any additional medical cost that Medicaid or their health insurance doesn't cover or doesn't fully cover. An ABLE account, again, is the usage for an ABLE account is very broad, so as to help fill in those gaps of where, if they are receiving benefits, the benefits aren't covering it, or if they're not, maybe their health insurance isn't able to fully cover it. I always give the example of maybe a parent or an individual would like to receive equine therapy, and their health insurance or their Medicaid doesn't cover that. Then a parent could save for their child who loves horses or benefit from equine therapy to go and receive that extra support to help meet their needs. I will mention that I am not an attorney and I'm not authorized to give tax or legal advice. My attorney would love to know that I'm saying this today. So I cannot give tax or legal advice in regards to qualified expenses, but I'm happy to share examples of how I'm seeing our ABLE account owners utilizing their accounts, the beneficiaries, and as well examples of individuals or financial advisors and estate planning attorneys, how they're sharing with me ways that they're advising their clients to use their INvestABLE Indiana accounts. And we do encourage individuals, beneficiaries, to keep track of their expenses, such as one would with a checkbook, in regards to the date of the expense, the amount, and what the funds were used for, because an ABLE account can be audited by Social Security Administration in the case that they are receiving Social Security benefits, or the IRS can audit these accounts as well. So just to keep a basic log. Some people ask, should I keep receipts? Sure, that would probably be a safe, advisable approach. So I mentioned that second special tax advantage, or that special advantage to an ABLE account. The first being that protection of vital means tested benefits, and the second is the tax advantage savings from an ABLE account. So I mentioned that post-tax dollars fund the account, similar to like an HSA, and then the funds grow and can be withdrawn tax-free as long as they're used for qualified expenses. So different from an HSA, different from a 529, the qualified expenses are much broader. It's not just medical needs. It's not just, as with a 529, just secondary or post-secondary education expenses. It's much broader than that. So you might have an individual who's using a 529 that, let's say a parent is saving for their child, and the child, they have a 529, they're saving in their 529 for their child. The child gets a diagnosis of autism at, let's say, the age of 5. And they're like, well, it looks like my child may not go to school or may not go to college. But even if the child might go to college and might receive continued education, they could also, or roll over even, the funds from the 529 into an ABLE account to have that broader usage from an ABLE account as compared to a 529. I will mention there are no state-specific tax advantages for ABLE accounts, for INvestABLE Indiana accounts, as there are with our state's 529 program. So if you're familiar with Indiana's 529 College Choice Program, there is a state tax credit that is offered with that. Now, we have tried to get that tax parity offered to our INvestABLE Indiana account owners, but it hasn't been passed. The legislation hasn't been passed, but we still hope to pursue that tax parity. So that's just important to keep in mind. But there is ABLE account beneficiaries are also potentially eligible for the Savers Credit. And this is also called the Retirement Savings Contribution Credit. And I'm not a tax professional, but it is essentially a tax credit that is available to lower income earners that are not participating in an employer-sponsored retirement program. So if you or someone thinks that an individual might be eligible for that Savers Credit, then certainly they could tap into that tax advantage for their ABLE account. All right, so I'm going to throw out some numbers at you. And I know this is a lot of information. This is it's not a complex program, and I don't want individuals to be deterred from enrolling in the program. We hear a lot from account beneficiaries that I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to sign up for my ABLE account, because I waited a year or whatever to start saving, and I could have been a year or 6 months or however long I waited of additional savings that I could have had. So it's never too early to start planning for your future. It's never too early to start saving, especially for an individual with a disability that certainly faces and incurs a higher cost of living than non-disabled individuals. So if an individual is receiving SSI, or supplemental security income, they can save an aggregate of $100,000 in their ABLE account. If their ABLE account balance goes over $100,000, then their monthly cash benefit is temporarily suspended until the ABLE balance drops beneath $100,000. They do not lose eligibility for SSI benefits, but they lose that monthly cash benefit. So potentially up to that $764. Don't quote me on that, but it's just over $700. But it's still a vital benefit. So that's important to be aware of. So SSI limit on an ABLE account is $100,000. An individual retains Medicaid eligibility regardless of the account balance. Now, the possibility of Medicaid recapture after death of the individual is not a given, and it is only possible. So let's say an ABLE account beneficiary passes away. There is still money remaining in their ABLE account. First, any outstanding qualified expenses must be paid for that individual from the ABLE account. So if they have outstanding medical bills, if they have funeral or burial costs that could be covered from that ABLE account, it is possible that certainly in that circumstance, that the funds in the ABLE account could be exhausted. If funds are remaining after all outstanding qualified expenses are paid for from the ABLE account, then there is a possibility of Medicaid recapture, but it is not required. So Indiana's Medicaid agency has taken the position that they will not actively seek recapture from INvestABLE accounts unless the federal government requires them to do so. And in the case of Medicaid recapture, it only takes place if during the period of time that both Medicaid and the ABLE account were open together. So if they had Medicaid for 20 years of their life, their ABLE account was open for 10 years, then Medicaid recapture from the ABLE account could only look at that 10-year window. But again, I will emphasize that Medicaid recapture is not required. It is not a definite, and Medicaid doesn't get that first dibs on the funds. Those qualified expenses first must be paid for from the ABLE account. I've heard of, because the Medicaid recapture gives, understandably so, gives people pause when opening an ABLE account. There's lots of reasons that, I go down the rabbit hole of explaining, what our enrollment looks like, where our numbers are today, and I'm happy to discuss that. But there's certain barriers that we as state ABLE administrators do face when getting individuals to enroll. One is the possibility of Medicaid recapture. So I try to ease minds as best as I can that it is not a given. There are certain limitations to the Medicaid recapture. And then the second one is, in terms of growing these programs and getting more individuals to enroll, is that we're working with a population that has historically been told one thing, that you can't save over $2,000, you have to stay under this limit, and then all of a sudden we're coming in and telling them a different story, that now you can save money, you can achieve financial and economic empowerment and independence. So, and there's a trust factor between the disability population, people with disabilities, and the government, specifically the entities such as Social Security and such, because it can be a bit of a hassle to deal with those entities. But in terms of trying to ease the minds of individuals enrolling in the programs, we try to work through these barriers as much as possible and educate individuals such as yourself, businesses, to hopefully support enrollment in ABLE accounts. All right, I digress. So in terms of additional contributions into the ABLE account, there's only one account allowed per owner, but anyone can contribute. With INvestABLE Indiana, we do have what's called the UGift feature. And this is a unique online gifting portal that allows for anyone to easily contribute funds into their loved one's ABLE account, or someone they know, their ABLE account, their INvestABLE account specifically, in a safe and secure way. So think of it as sort of crowdsourcing or crowdfunding an ABLE account. If an individual isn't able to contribute significant amounts into their account on their own, then if you have a parent that is like, my child doesn't need any more toys, please consider saving for their future, helping to support their future by gifting into their INvestABLE account. That is easily done through the UGift feature. Now, there is a $15,000 annual contribution limit for an ABLE account. But if an individual is working and has earned income, they can save additional amounts into their ABLE account from their earned income per year if they're not participating in an employer-sponsored retirement program. So the additional amount an individual could contribute under what's called Able to Work would be the lesser of the following, either their annual gross income or the federal poverty limit. So potentially an individual who's working and has that earned income could contribute upwards of $27,000 into their ABLE account per year. Certainly a significant amount of savings for an individual that maybe has been limited to what they can save in the past. Again, if they're not receiving benefits, that's still a nice amount that they can contribute and help support their current needs or their future needs. Now, I mentioned that the $100,000 was the limit for SSI recipients. If an individual is not receiving SSI, they can save up to $450,000 in their INvestABLE account, and that's the aggregate. So there's the annual contribution limit that is $15,000 or more under Able to Work, and then the aggregate savings limit is either $100,000 for SSI recipients or $450,000 for non-SSI recipients. And I did mention that rollovers are allowed from 529s into 529A ABLE accounts. So again, in the case of a parent that was saving for their child in a 529, if they realize that they'd rather start saving in an ABLE account, they could easily roll those funds over into that account. But this is just a high-level overview of our investment options. So we understand that investing can be confusing. So we've tried to give a diverse offering of investment options, but tried to make it as easy as possible. So our investments are comprised of mutual funds and ETFs. And we also offer that range from more conservative options to more aggressive options, depending on what an individual's unique savings goals might be. An individual can make 2 allocation changes amongst the investment options per year. That's a federal government rule. And then we also offer a checking option. It's a low interest checking option. Our partner through the checking option is Fifth Third Bank. With that being said, an individual doesn't go to Fifth Third to open the account. All enrollment in our program is done online. But with that checking option, an individual receives a debit card to make it even easier to access their funds, to go to the store, use their debit card, and access their ABLE funds. I will say that about 30% of our account owners utilize the checking option. It's a very, it might be more than that right now. I haven't checked the numbers lately, but it is one of the most popular options just because it comes with that debit card. And it can be a great tool for, say, a young adult who is learning how to manage their money to access and to take that debit card and go to the store with their caregiver to learn how to appropriately manage their funds. Because it can be, if you're a parent, you know that it is very scary to let your child go on their own and figure out how to use their money. So having this additional tool is a wonderful feature to our program. Now, the fees associated with an ABLE account we've tried to keep them, again, very low and affordable. I do get a lot of questions as to whether or not an ABLE account can be used with a special needs trust. Now, if you're familiar with special needs trusts, they have historically been the only sort of savings mechanism that an individual with a disability who is receiving public benefits had access to. But in short, in answer to that question as to whether or not an ABLE account and a special needs trust can be used together, yes, absolutely they can. We see it happen all the time. We see individuals having both open. We see individuals funding their ABLE accounts from their special needs trust to have more autonomy. Because as you may or may not know, with a special needs trust, you have a trustee that is giving out that money, that is approving expenditures from that trust. With an ABLE account, the account owner or the beneficiary or their authorized individual in certain circumstances have direct access to their money. They don't have to go through that third party to get approval for an expense. So if you want to go pay your cell phone bill, you don't have to get approval from a trustee with an ABLE account. You just make a withdrawal from your ABLE account and pay your cell phone bill. But it's $25, a minimum of $25 to open an ABLE account. And looking at my sort of business audience and employer audience as I am today, if an individual wants to fund their ABLE account from their paycheck, if you have a payroll and HR, your HR of your business would like to support that diverse and inclusive workforce, then we have the ability to set up direct deposit from a paycheck into an ABLE account if that was needed. So again, $25 to open an account. Anytime funds are contributed into an INvestABLE account, it just has to be a minimum of $25. So $25 could come out of every paycheck to support their disability related needs. Now, the annual asset-based fees range from 0.34 to 0.37%, so very low and affordable annual asset-based fees. And I'll draw your attention down to the 4th bullet point under the fees section and explain the annual account maintenance fee. It is either $45 or $60 a year. If an individual would like to pay a lower maintenance fee, then they just have to enroll in electronic delivery of statements and notifications. And you get that decrease in the account maintenance fee, I should say. And the account maintenance fee is withdrawn. That $45 or $60 a year is broken up into quarterly installments. So it's not $45 or $60 that comes out of the investable account at once. It'll be just over $11 a quarter. So it's not too much of a hit from the account. Now with the checking option, there is a low monthly fee if they're enrolled in that, and it's $2 a month, but that fee can also easily be waived if they maintain an average daily balance of $250 or more, or if they enroll in electronic statements from Fifth Third. So to explain a little bit about enrollment in the program, as I mentioned earlier, enrollment is all done online, even if an individual is accessing the checking option. Our website is in.savewithable.com. We encourage individuals to take a look at the program disclosure statement, and in the enrollment process, the first question they're going to be asked is who is opening this account. Is it the beneficiary, the individual with the disability, or is it an authorized individual, so parent, guardian, or power of attorney? They're going to be walked through the investment, where they'd like to allocate their investments. They will need certain personal identifying information to enroll, such as a street address, taxpayer ID, or social security number, and a personal bank account number if they'd like to pre-schedule contributions from that personal bank account into their ABLE account. So you can sort of set it and forget it and start saving for your future, your loved one's future. Again, I mentioned that you'll have to have $25 minimum to open the account. And if, again, going back to that eligibility piece, if an individual is not receiving SSI or SSDI, and they're going to enroll by self-certification, they're just going to want to make sure that they have in their records that qualified disability. Now, we will not ask them for that self-certification or a diagnosis in enrollment because that is, we don't want to have to review all of the disability related diagnoses, and it is personal protected health information. So we just ask them to do a self-attestation that they have a qualifying disability. And this is my last slide. It just is a quick at a glance reference as to our website, our client services contact information. You can go online and learn more about the program. As I mentioned, there is a direct deposit form. There's lots of other information. There is even, I will say, a power of attorney. You can give certain levels of account authorization to an authorized individual. There's varying levels of authorization in that regard. Even if an individual doesn't have the capacity or has the capacity to open an account on their own, but they would rather give the authority to someone else, there is even a full power of attorney for the plan that is available through the program. So I will wrap it up there. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm happy to ask questions or answer questions and engage in some additional conversation at this point.
Good presentation. I got a couple of questions, Amy. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff, and if somebody wants some details. So I need to be clear on this. So does the account belongs to the individual, but via UGift or I could make contribution for my child, cousin, whoever. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is that a deduction for me?
It is not. There is no deduction that I'm aware of at this point. So it's not a tax deduction on your own taxes.
But so I just want
because
to be clear.
there's no state tax credit or deduction currently within the state of Indiana. Right. So right. As it stands, no. We tried to get that. We tried to get the credit, that tax parity offered to our program participants, similar to what's offered through the 529, but our state legislature has not passed that yet.
So I just want to be clear. So when the person takes it out, there's no federal tax payment either, correct?
Correct. As long as the funds are used for a qualified expense,
Right.
there would be no.
Okay.
Now, if it's used for what would be considered a non-qualified expense, so if the IRS came in and audited the account and they determined that a disbursement was non-qualified, then they would essentially have to pay taxes on the earnings portion of the withdrawal.
Okay.
And
good.
then it's also important to be aware of, again, I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole of benefits and stuff, but if an individual, as I mentioned, is receiving means tested benefits, that entity, so we'll say Social Security, they're receiving SSI. SSI is looking at how much they have in income and how much they have in savings. And if they make what would be considered a non-qualified withdrawal from their ABLE account, then, as I mentioned, they'd have to pay their taxes on the earnings portion of the withdrawal. And then the earnings portion would also be considered income to them. So that's just important to keep in mind for those individuals.
Yeah.
Great question.
Good. Rhoda, please.
Would you say that it's true that as business people, the most important thing that we could do relative to disabled is hire them?
Absolutely, yeah.
Or find people who could hire them. And then let's say they already have an ABLE account and now they're getting hired. And so whatever they're earning, let's say part-time, then that doesn't wreck up their ABLE account, right?
Correct. If they're earning funds or earning money, the only thing that they might be watching is how much they're earning in regards to how it affects any benefits they might be receiving. If they're not receiving benefits, then they may not be limited to how much they can earn. But if an individual is receiving supplemental security income, then they might be limited to how much they can earn. But certainly employing individuals with disabilities, we just came out of October. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. There's the disability world, within the world of disability, it is a month of pushing to elevate the profile of or the information and pushing out the information of employing individuals with disabilities. We see within those individuals within the workforce, their reliability, their attendance, their output in the workforce is much higher than individuals without disabilities. Individuals with disabilities want to work. They are valuable employees. Many individuals with disabilities that I've encountered don't want to be receiving benefits, but they need to because in certain circumstances, because they do face a higher cost of living. And when they are facing that higher cost of living, they rely on certain benefits to help support those additional needs, whether it be, having a wheelchair, certain technologies or assistance in getting through their day or modifying their home to meet their needs. But having an ABLE account can help supplement those benefits. And I will mention that having an ABLE account is intended to just supplement benefits. It's not intended to take the place of or supplant receipt of those benefits. But as a workforce, as a business, being able to support that diverse and inclusive workforce, or again, even just an individual that is working for you that does not have a disability, but they have a child or a loved one with a disability, then they could help support that individual through doing a direct deposit into an ABLE account.
I would love to have you as a speaker. I don't know if you've ever done this for the FPA. Have you ever?
The Financial Planners Association? Yeah. I'd absolutely love to. Happy to connect with any entities.
When we meet next week, I'm going to give you the information about how to apply for that to get credit so that the attendees can get credit for listening to you.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So
I appreciate
that will be good.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rhoda.
Anybody else?
Any other questions?
Any other questions? One of the things that we do here at CBN. Go ahead, Adele.
Just a quick question, Amy. Very good, very comprehensive presentation. I'm interested in how you market your program. Do you have anything about that?
Yes, I do work with a marketing firm. I will mention that many states with ABLE programs, states enacted the legislation states didn't fund the programs, didn't fund the back end on how we're supposed to get the message out there, how we're supposed to run the day-to-day. Some states are running their programs out of the Treasury. Some states are running their programs out of their 529 programs or other like FSSA entities. Most states have very limited funds. Now, I operate off a small appropriation. A large portion of my funds do go to marketing, but the biggest proponent of growth is grassroots. Talking to the entities, those 6 sort of entities that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, getting them at least on a high level educated about the programs so they can go talk to the individuals that they interact with. Because we do, within our program, we do account opening and closure surveys. And one of the questions on that survey is, how did you hear about the program? The majority, I will say, of individuals are hearing about the program through a trusted resource. So a financial advisor, a social worker, or someone who is coming in and working with them on a daily basis, an attorney. So they have a special needs trust or looking at setting one up, then they hear about the ABLE account. So it's those trusted entities that are interacting with the account owners or the authorized individuals that are the biggest proponent of growth at this point. But again, I do also work with a marketing firm, and we do digital outreach, social media, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering if you advertise publicly, like at churches and, like you said, social service agencies, and maybe put up a billboard or something.
Yes, it's just, I try to be as strategic as possible in my approach to marketing because the funding is very limited.
Yes.
And then I will mention the ABLE Alliance that we're a part of has been a great support. We share ideas. North Carolina is part of the National ABLE Alliance. They have an ABLE program as well. So we all share ideas about what's working, what's not working. But speaking opportunities such as this and those grassroots efforts are the largest proponent of growth, I would say.
Well,
thank you, Adele.
Yeah, Amy, one of the reasons we like to bring on a variety of speakers is to educate our attendees, because maybe they themselves don't have it, but they might have a family member or a friend. I was absolutely unaware that a program like this existed. I always thought you get that $2,000, you can't go beyond that. And you're right. I mean, you go, how can you live your life if your cap is at 2,000 and you want to do more? For some people, 2,000, they're never going to get to 2,000. So that's not the target market here. This is those that would exceed that 2,000 for an automobile, furniture in the apartment, et cetera, et cetera. And so you gotta have, I'm now a little smarter, and I can go, oh, my friend who might have a Down syndrome child, I go, this is what you ought to think about at least, right? And get a hold of this person that gives you this ABLE stuff. I don't know it, but now at least I know some basic foundations about it.
Absolutely. And Keith, please feel free, and I'll type in my contact information into the chat that you all can have access to. But if you put the piece, it's not settling with you right now, but you think about it a little bit more throughout your day, and you think, oh, well, this group that person that I know would benefit from knowing this information, then please feel free to share my contact information, or again, go to our website at in.savewithable.com. So type in my contact information.
And plus, her information will also be on the back end of our video that we produce also. So so if you don't get it out of the chat, don't worry about it. It'll be in the video. Okay, great presentation, Amy. I'm a little bit smarter, and that helps.
My job is done, right?
You did your end of it. So if anyone else has any other questions for Amy, okay, with that, I want to say thank you again, Amy, for presenting to us. I will say I'll be seeing all you guys next week. Look for the information that we talked about on planning for 2022, and I'll get that out this week too. But with that, I'll be saying I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.